Okay, so in the meantime, I would like to introduce our speakers from our today's session. We have Joe Dahe, a young climate advocate from Influencers Network. We have Bethlehem, a social entrepreneur from the Free Paper. We have Helena, a young female architect and environmentalist from Seed Bomb. We have Abel Haile Georgis from Bamboo Labs. He's also a social entrepreneur. We have Izzeddin Kamal, a well-known innovator, and also he wants a Destination Zero Innovation Challenge, which was organized by the British Council. He also joined us as a speaker. We have Abdeselassie, another social entrepreneur from Plant Farm. And lastly, we have Nancy Chabet, who joined us from Gambella. She's working on social action projects in Gambella region. Thank you all for joining us. So in the meantime, I would like to share with you the purpose of this dialogue. So mainly the purpose of this dialogue is to give an opportunity for young people who are doing on-ground action from Ethiopia, so that they can, showcase their projects and impacts to the global community as well as community in Addis Ababa. So as we are also leading up to COP26, the global community should also have to know about the climate actions in Ethiopia, which includes the Green Legacy Initiative, which was launched by the Prime Minister, and also which we are planting a huge number of billions of trees all over the world, and also young people are contributing much of their efforts in planting the trees and also preparing space for plantation. And also this initiative also created seasonal jobs for young people. Sorry, the UN climate champions will join us shortly. They're facing some technical issues. In the meantime, you can introduce yourself in the online participants can introduce yourself in the chat box from where you are following us, and also what you're doing, introduce from which organization you are, and also on which action are you participating with regards to climate action, whether it's in renewable energy, tree plantation, adaptation, mitigation. Please let us know what you are doing. Also, the another purpose of this session is to get in touch with each other and also create a platform for young people to do their innovative and thoughtful projects to be on the ground. Yeah, I'm seeing Addis guy from Addis Ababa. She joined us virtually. This is the first time attending this kind of sessions. Thank you, Candice, for joining us.
Hi, Yaron. It's Nigel here. Good to see you.
Good to see you, Nigel.
Hello. Hi, everyone.
Hi. Good to see both the UN high-level climate champions, Gonzalo, Munoz, and Nigel talking. Thank you for joining us. And also, this is a great opportunity for us, especially for young Ethiopians, to have a session with you and to have a conversation with you. We have a lot to say. We have a lot to showcase to the global community, and also we want your support with regards to championing our works. So without any further ado, I would like to welcome the two high-level champions. Can you just quickly introduce yourself and for the online participants and also for the speakers? I'm going to give the floor to Gonzalo first.
Well, thank you, Jared. It's a real honor to be with all of you today. I'm Gonzalo Munoz. I'm calling from Santiago, the capital city of Chile. I was named on early 2019 as the UN high-level champion for COP25, as Chile was at that time at the incoming presidency of COP, now at the presidency. And I've been in this role coming from the private sector. I've been an entrepreneur for 15 years and an executive in business for another 10 years, and delighted to be able to share with all of you some of my personal experience, both on the entrepreneurial side, but also in this amazing role that we have the privilege to carry with Nigel, in which also we have been operating as entrepreneurs ourselves in the last 2 years, bringing not only our expertise, but mostly our common passion, and trying to innovate in the role as much as we can, respecting, of course, the mandate and respecting that we're here to serve the nations, what is called the parties, but in that sense, bringing there the sense of urgency that we need to carry while confronting the biggest crisis that we've ever confronted.
Thank you for the brief introduction, Gonzalo. Now I'm going to give a floor to introduce to us to Nigel topic. Yeah.
First Zoom of the day. Sorry. Hi, Yared. Great to be with you. Good to see you, Gonzalo. My name is Nigel Topping. I'm the UN high-level climate action champion for COP26. So same role as Gonzalo, based here in the UK. I live in the west of England in Devon, but I'm in London today. My background is in the first half of my career in industry and manufacturing industry around the world, and but for the last 15 years I've been working as a climate campaigner, trying to use my experience in the private sector to really try and mobilize the private sector as a vector for positive change. So I spent several years at the Carbon Disclosure Project, and then before Paris, and since and until getting this role, I was running a coalition called We Mean Business, which was formed to mobilize a positive voice of business in support of the Paris Agreement, which worked very well and has since then been mobilized more ambition and action. So it was a real honor to get this role and to really extend my mandate to be more to the formal UN mandate, which Gonzalo's described, but also to working with broader non-state actors, so civil society, cities, regions, and investors, and really keen to hear more about what you guys are doing and about how we can help.
Sure. Thank you, both, for joining us from Santiago and London. Thank you so much. We are also joined from Addis Ababa. Many of the young people are based in Addis, and also Nancy from Gambela, one of the region in Ethiopia. So I have one question for each of you. So the first is, you just touched it about the climate champions role. So what's the climate champions role and mandate in relation to climate action? And could you speak the ambition loop, and also COP27, and also why are you both interested to hear about young Africans in particularly? So I'm going to give the floor first to Gonzalo.
Great. So thank you, Jared. The history of climate action and the ways the world is trying to tackle the climate crisis is very well related to this role of the nations, right? The parties that they decided to create the three conventions on environment right after the Earth Summit in '92, being one of those conventions, the United Nations Convention on Climate Change, the UNFCCC, and through that mechanisms, the idea is that parties can reach an agreement in order to solve the problem that they need to solve, right? In this case, the agreement was reached in 2015 at the Paris COP21, where the parties convene and then they define which are like the main elements that will allow all of us to solve the crisis. And in that particular moment, they also embrace the capacity of what are the other actors, but what are not state actors, the non-state actors. And that means a broader community of subnational regions, states, businesses, investors, universities, civil society at large. All of them have the capacity of implementing such an agreement. And the idea is that by recognizing them, they are being invited formally to become a relevant part of the solution, right? And not only randomly, but in a way that is absolutely coordinated with the parties. So in order to coordinate those actions and to aggregate them, not to be dispersed, but rather be absolutely coordinated, they name the champions. Each country that takes the presidency has to name a champion to somehow lead and run this agenda, 2 by 2, coordinated as well, in order to ensure the continuity of the role and the continuity of the work. That's how we work 2 by 2. And due to the pandemic, with Nigel, we've been working 2 years instead of 1 together. And we manage most of this agenda through the platform that was created by the first 2 high-level champions, Laurent Soubiana from COP21 and Hakim Al-Haiti from COP22. They created the Marrakesh Partnership as a platform of the coalitions that allow us to understand what is happening in each of the major sectors of the economy and be able to bring that knowledge in a very formal way for the nations to understand what is happening in the real world, as they call it, but also what can be accelerated more if they set more and more the better public policies. And I will allow my dear friend Nigel to explain much more about the ambition loop and then about the role of the youth in Africa. I think that nobody better than Nigel to speak about it.
Yes. So also I'm going to add another question to Nigel. So Gonzalo touched about the mandates of the climate champions. and as one of the role of the climate champions is to mobilize non-state actors, and thus we are going to also COP26 and also heading to COP27, where the global stocktake will kick off. How will you push to engage and mobilize non-state actors on equity and science-based global stock-taking process? So this is another. I'm going to add this question, and also if you could touch upon on why you choose to discuss with young Africans in particular.
Right. First of all, the idea of the ambition loop, which Gonzalo left on this, is the idea we have about the positive momentum can create feedback loops which ratchet ambition. So that, and this is particularly important when you remember that politicians are always having to respond to particularly their citizens, especially if it's a democracy, and the market, right? So politicians are constrained, right, by people like you, and you see when they get this wrong, you have things like the Gilets jaunes in France, where you're trying to push a policy, but actually you get pulled back. So one thing we notice is that when non-state actors, so whether that's civil society, businesses, investors, and lower levels of government, cities and regions, when they are really pushing for more ambitious climate action, it makes it easier for national policymakers. And of course, when national policymakers are more ambitious, it incentivizes everyone else to move. That's what we call the ambition loop. So we're trying to recognize this is a whole of society systemic change. It's not just about national policy. The reason we're particularly engaged with young Africans, first of all, I mean, there's lots of reasons. We're really, I think that the voice of youth has been really helpful in part of that, as part of that dynamic. It's not been uniquely helpful, but it certainly has changed the politics in quite a few countries. In my own country, direct action, civil disobedience has definitely changed the politics, and young people have been a big part of that. Of course, young people have a huge role in solutions as well, because they're going into the world of politics or the world of industry. They're not just activists. I think Africa is particularly important to us for multiple reasons. COP27 next year, I'll be working with a champion from whichever country is eventually formally takes COP27. And Africa is a young continent, right? I mean, the median age in Africa is 19 and a half years. The median age in Europe is 42 and a half. So Europe is, the bulk of your demographic is young. I mean, if you're 19, you're in the middle of the population. You have to be 43 till you get to the middle of the population in Europe. So I think it's even more reason to mobilize. And Africa, of course, is not just important because it's the COP, but because it is the continent which has the most climate vulnerable countries, is the continent where the issue of climate injustice, I think you could say Africa and small island states, I think you could say other groups of countries which demonstrate the realities of climate injustice. And so just so that's a bit about ambition loop and youth in Africa. In terms of you asked me about science-based targets and equity, right? Yeah. So Gonzalo and I have launched 3 campaigns. The Race to Zero, which is about mitigation. We've got to get emissions down to zero as quickly as possible. You all know that, right? But you also know that the focus on mitigation, which has had the most attention, which is one of the 3 legs of Paris, has often led to a lack of attention to adaptation and resilience. And that's why we have this second campaign called the Race to Resilience, which is really about identifying and lifting up the initiatives which are addressing that result of that inequity, which is that the communities that have done the least to cause climate change are the ones most vulnerable to it. And by the way, that is predominantly, yes, in the global south, but those vulnerable communities who are often poor communities and communities of color also exist in the global north. Gonzalo and I were in Louisiana recently. Hurricane Katrina disproportionately affected people of color in Louisiana, and so this issue of resilience is a global north issue as well as a global south issue. I think that's also important in terms of trying to push more of a solidarity message. And then the third campaign is on global finance. It's the Glasgow Financial Alliance for Net Zero. In the mitigation campaign, we put science at the very heart of it. So you can't fight the science, you can't argue the science. We've got to get to zero as quickly as possible. And in particular, this idea of science-based targets, so short-term targets, which will drive the action in this decade, must be based in the science of what is necessary and possible sector by sector. So the whole of the race to zero is based on the idea that, yes, you're committing to net zero 2050 or 2045 or 2039. We like dates that are earlier than 2050, but you're also got a short-term plan. Otherwise, it's just not credible. And that short-term plan must be based on science.
Sure. Thank you both, Nigel and Gonzalo, for your answer. Now, we will move to the part that I'm especially looking forward to, which is meeting my fellow young people who are championing climate action in Ethiopia. Now I'm going to welcome all the speakers and fellow young peoples to join the panel. Yes. Now, first, I'm going to welcome Joe Dahe, a young climate advocate from Influencers Network. So, Joe Dahe, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Yes. Could you explain more about the focus area and aim of the Influencers Network and what's your vision for it?
Thank you, Yared, once again, and the rest of the panelists. Once again, my name is Jodahe Bezada Petros. I'm a self-proclaimed youth and environmental activator, and I'm a founder for Influencers Network. So Influencers Network basically started because of such issues, which is environmental protection and youth involvement. For so many years, we have seen our older generation or the people before us working on their projects alone. So we wish to bring in various actors that are working on environmental protection, such as, for example, the scientists, the business people, the youth, the old, whoever it is that are working on environmental protection, to come together and work on such manners. So you can see on a few of the projects that we have been doing, including with the government of Ethiopia, such as the Green Legacy, we have seen where our government has pushed the younger generation to start working on planting our future. So our influencers community, the word as it says, it's influencing, which is onto something that is good. E represents not only environment and earth, but also adds in Ethiopia, education and entertainment. So we're trying to focus on how we can collaborate all of such major issues in our world and how we could cater it into solving and combating the climate change. We have focused on health, art, the business sector, and education and technology, so that we could potentially solve a lot of issues out there. And I hope everybody could join the influencers and Jodas Influence wherever you guys are following us from. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Jodahe. Thank you for touching up on Green Legacy and also what you're doing on the ground with regards to advocacy. Maybe do you have questions to Nigel or Gonzalo?
I do have a question for Nigel. So the concept of local solutions for local problems could potentially have a better effect in the whole world. And what are your reflections on that? I believe solving an issue for ourselves might be much more realistic. And what are your takes on that? Thank you.
Thanks, Jodahe. And so far, you're winning the prize for the smartest jacket. I'm jealous. Gonzalo, we need to get a race to zero, race to resilience jacket that can match Jodahe.
It's beautiful.
Jodahe, I mean, this is a deep question, right? And I think that we should be careful not to assume that everything has to be local or that everything has to be global. It depends on the dynamic of the problem at hand. So, for example, when we're trying to accelerate the phase out of the internal combustion engine, which is one of the things we're trying to do, that's a very global industry with a relatively small number of players, right? So, so you can't really tackle car companies at a local level. I mean, of course you can if you've got a factory or a headquarters in your town, but most people can't. But you can engage with the cities that you live in or the local government, who often have powers to set air quality standards or even to ban certain types of vehicle. So I think that when it comes to mitigation, there's often quite an important local role for local government. And so we certainly work a lot with cities and regional governments. So we have over 700 cities in the Race to Zero. We hope to get to 1,000 So those are all cities committed to getting to zero before 2050. Many of them 2040 or even 2030. And we've got a growing number of regions. Gonzalo's been working closely in Brazil. We just have 3 regions in Brazil just joined. And that can also be very important when the national government is maybe not as progressive on climate ambition as in Brazil. I think where locally led solutions really comes into its own is in resilience and adaptation. And we have Sheila Patel, who some of you may know, who's the who runs the Slum and Shack Dwellers International, which is a international grassroots organization and bringing together communities in informal settlements all around the world. She's been one of the big advocates and has educated us about, and there's even been published some principles for locally led adaptation, which are about making sure that the indigenous knowledge, i.e. the knowledge of the people who are living in those communities, is part of the solution. So I think I would say there's 2 slightly different ways. One where the local powers can influence a global system, and one where local knowledge must be integrated into the local solution.
Thank you, Nigel, for the answers. Now let me welcome Bethlehem, a social entrepreneur from Zafri Papers. Bethlehem, are you with us?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, I can hear you. Could you please speak about your company? What kind of role does your company play in implementing circular economy practices, and also what are your reflections on how business can be part of addressing climate crisis?
Okay, thank you, Yared, and thanks everyone for being here. I am Betty from Ethiopia, founder and CEO of Zafri Papers. So as a person who grew up surrounded by trees and a very refreshing environment, and coming across the fact that the paper industry alone takes the blame of 14% of the world's climate challenge we're facing currently was a very shocking experience for me. So with that in mind, Zafri was born, which is a company that makes 100% tree-free paper from agriculture waste. So we decided to work in a closed loop system, making sure that nothing goes to waste in Zafri, and also making sure that our entire value chain and production process is eco-friendly. So our value chain starts from buying the agriculture waste from the small farmers, which is traditionally burnt on site for a quick turnaround of crops and to condition their soil as well, but which at the same time contributes to the devastating climate change. And after collecting the waste from the small farmers, we process our paper pulp and brown paper using 90% less water, 70% less energy compared to the current paper making process. So after processing this, we make sure that we reuse our liquid byproduct, but at the same time, we give back our solid byproduct, which is also an organic fertilizer, to our small farmers for free, so that they can also still use it to condition their soil. So we're currently working with around 8,000 small farmers, and we're very much located very near to the small farmers, so that we also make sure that we don't use carbon emitting transportation. So we simply use simple transportation, traditional transportation systems like carrots, which have zero carbon emission. So we've currently shifted to from a handmade paper making to a medium scale factory, and we're currently finalizing our pre-operational activities to be very operational very soon. And we work in collaboration with paper product factories so that they can also manufacture a sustainable and a tree-free paper product. So we're trying to create a win-win situation on every step we go. So for the last question you asked, I believe business plays a vital role in protecting and also at the same time damaging our environment, and learning from our small experience building a small business and trying to grow. There is much more that businesses can do by acting very quickly and decisively to move beyond minimizing harm to actively seeking to have a more positive impact and they need to innovate, for example, creating more products and services which encourage and enable their customers to make their own commitments to contributing to the sustainable future, or maybe applying circular economy practices, and many more. So businesses as part of a society also has a responsibility to hold itself to account and act to address the environmental challenge we're facing. So at Zafri, we've decided to make innovation, green lifestyle, and environment protection our culture, and we hope every individual and every business do the same. Thank you.
Thank you, Betalehem. Do you have questions for Gonzalo or Nigel? You have the floor.
Yes, I would like to direct my question to Gonzalo. So I know he also works in the circular economy, and I know he has a lot of experience. So Gonzalo, how will the transition to a circular economy benefit our economy and contribute to reaching the target of climate neutrality by 2050? And what kind of results are you seeing while implementing circular economy practices yourself?
Well, first, let me congratulate Bethlehem for your personal history and for Safri. It's a fantastic example that hoping many people listening to you, not only today, should follow. And let me reflect on two elements that are very similar from your story to mine. As I said in my introduction, I was the main executive of companies for 10 years, mostly packaging food. And as you once analyzed that deforestation and the way that paper was produced was absolutely unsustainable. You cannot sustain that on time. In my case, was about packing mostly with non-recyclable materials. And connecting to what you mentioned in terms of the role of business, and also to what Nigel referred to when it comes to global activities that can be changed from the offer side. We at the business level know very well what we're doing. And sometimes we know very well what are our kind of blind spots. And we even decide to have blind spots. We know perfectly what type of material, what type of chemical, what type of energy we're using while putting our products into the market. And it's our decision to make it better or not. Many times we use the excuse that, well, if the market is not going to pay for this, or if the consumers are not going to reward me, or if the legislation is not necessarily the one that is forcing me, I'm not going to do changes. But there's an element there, like it's a decision that you take as an entrepreneur, as a business person, to put a product into the market, recognizing that there are certain externalities there that are unsustainable. If you project that in time, the world gets worse. So in that sense, what I've seen in my case was, okay, I'm fed up to this. I'm not going to continue contributing to a world that gets worse and worse. Why my company, or the company that I was running for the shareholders, was getting, let's say, better and better in terms of financial results. So I decided to start this company called Triciclos meaning 3 cycles, and combining the financial impact with the environmental impact and with the social impact, but measuring it, connected to the impact, as we do in the business sector, that we normally manage very, very carefully every single percentage of the financial results. What if we do the same thing with the social and environmental impact? In order to do that, you have to have a budget. You have to have a kind of balance. You have to measure that. You have to reward your employees with that in mind. And let me be honest. 15 years ago, people will call me absolutely crazy for promoting that in my country. In that, and not even in those 15 years, in the last, I would say, 8 years, we've seen an incredible acceleration of businesses understanding that if you don't take those extra metrics into consideration, if you don't manage them really seriously, if you don't reward all of your stakeholders in consideration of social and environmental impact, your company will be at risk. And in that sense, one of the one of the trajectories, two of the trajectories that I've been seeing regarding circular economy that have been very successful is one related to plastic. When I started this journey 15 years ago and trying to question from the inside of the company that I was running, the problem of selling waste. Every time that we were putting a product into the market, we were selling waste. We were kind of rewarding our customers with something that was a problem for them and for the environment. At that time, was kind of really weird to position. Nowadays, and let's say from the, and this connects very well to what Jodari said, the influencers and the capacity of broader communications to really position topic. Let me be very concrete. January 15th, 2016, we were at the World Economic Forum in Davos presenting the new plastics economy, a work that we have been developing with many other organizations around the world, led, of course, by the World Economic Forum and the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. Nobody was paying attention to that. But the following day, it was, I don't know if it was 17th or 19th January 2016, the World Economic Forum launched by the social media this big phrase saying, if we don't anything, I mean, more plastic than fish in the ocean, that can be a reality by 2050 if we don't change. That phrase has been the most shared phrase in the social media of the World Economic Forum in history. Like if you Google or if you check the Google search for plastic waste and plastic problem and plastic ocean, until that day, there was almost nothing. That day, the trajectory changed. And you've seen like how not only the legislation have changed in many countries around the world, the problem became something that people started resonating with, and then that is forcing the businesses that is packing every type of material with many times elements that are not recyclable to commit and start changing the trajectory. It doesn't mean that the problem is solved, but you have seen a change on trajectory worldwide when you can recognize a moment when this became viral, this became a topic for influencers, this became a matter of artists and sports people and everybody around the world start talking about it, and that is forcing all of the different elements. It's not just something that is resonating within the environmental community.
Thank you, Gonzalo, for the well explained answer. Now I'm going to welcome a young female architect and environmentalist, Helena from Seedbomb Ethiopia and Climate Change Africa, who is working on nature-based solution. Helena, are you with us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes. I'm going to raise the question to you. What are your thoughts on nature-based solution as avenue for adaptation as well as mitigation, and how is your organization is working in restoring ecosystem part of the as a part of the climate solution?
Thank you, Yared, for the questions and the opportunity to introduce a bit about myself. My name is Helena Teklu, and I'm an architect by profession, but currently I'm working as the CEO and co-founder of two companies. One is called Seedbomb Ethiopia, and the other is called Climate Change Africa, where we focus on deforestation, environment, and so forth. Other than that, recently I've been elected as the Earth Champion for East Africa by IGAD, and it's such an honor to be here, and I'm very delighted. So to answer your questions, to begin with, when we talk about nature-based solutions, we have to understand that this concept is relatively young, and for me, nature-based solution is all about sustainability. And when we look deeper into the meaning, it basically means conserving, restoring, or better managing ecosystems to remove carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. And some of the examples for nature-based solutions that I would put right now would be to allow forests to regrow and restore also agricultural practices, which will reduce climate change by adapting carbon dioxide, by taking carbon dioxide from the air. And also when we restore wetlands, that's one of the nature-based solutions that we can have, and it will help us prevent greenhouse gas emissions. So for me, nature-based solutions will help us in adaptation and mitigation of climate change, as it will provide us clean air and water, economic benefits, and it will also increase biodiversity. So that being said, what we're doing with our company Seed Bomb Ethiopia is, can you guys see my sample that I have here? This is called seed balls, and what we do is, it's very easy to make. I don't know if some of you know the concept of seed balls. It's very international, has been used for almost 2,000 years and so more than that. So what we do is we use natural materials like black soil, red soil, and chicken residue, and we put the seed within them. So what seed balls help us is, not only will they protect the seeds from being eaten from birds and so forth, this will allow us to plant different trees for areas that are inaccessible to human beings by using planes and drones. And so we can reforest the different parts of Ethiopia and also Africa and sustain it. And one of the good things about seed balls is during the rainy seasons, you don't need to water it and so forth. It just takes care of itself. So this is the project we're doing, and we're taking this in a very big project where we have our factory in the southern part of Ethiopia. And we have, for now, for example, we have 4 workers under us, and we have produced around 50,000 different indigenous Ethiopian trees, which we plan to get involved with the Green Legacy. So on our project, what we basically do is we're trying to fill in the gap between deforestation, climate change, and also what we're doing is with another company called Climate Change Africa, what we do is we create the platform for the African youth to showcase their projects, because as you all know, 70% of the African population are the youth. And so we're mobilizing all the youth to come together as one and work. And also when it comes to nature-based solutions, we're using seed balls in order to fight climate change. Thank you.
Thank you, Helena, for answering my questions. Now I'm going to welcome another social entrepreneur, who is Abel from Bamboo Labs. Abel, are you with us?
Hello, Addis. Yeah, I'm here.
Thank you, Abel. What are your thoughts on business addressing societal concern in providing solutions to marginalized community members, such as differently abled, and what was sustainability a big priority for you and your business?
Thank you, Arit. Thank you, everyone. I am Abel Haile-Giorgis, the founder and lead engineer of Bamboo Labs. With regards to business addressing societal and environmental solutions, I believe Bamboo Labs is a good example. As we all know, bike is one of the environmental friendly mode of transport because there is less traffic, fewer carbon dioxide emission, and active lifestyle. So doing these things in a better environmental friendly way is also another advantage. Bamboo is one of sustainable material of 21st century because it's fast growing plant requiring significantly less land and water to grow. 3 to 5 years is enough to get matured bamboo pole, and it can easily regrow from the remaining calm shoot. In Ethiopia only, there is about 1.4 million land is covered with bamboo, and 70% of the African bamboo resource is found in Ethiopia, but practically it's underutilized. So we wanted to bring positive societal and environmental impacts by producing eco-friendly products. We started by producing bamboo wheelchairs to answer the growing demand of mobility for physically disabled people. Currently, we are expanding to produce quality bamboo bicycle frames. Our bamboo bike production is less energy intensive. It's reduced 5 kilograms of carbon dioxide emission from each bike. Bamboo plantation by itself generates 35% more oxygen compared with equivalent standing trees. So in our production process, nothing is wasted. Even scrap materials can be converted for different purposes, like you see here. In addition to that, also we are also impacting the society by creating job opportunities for the youth and for the women. Sustainability is a big priority in our business because sustainability is not just good for the environment or for society at large, it's good for the business itself. So we believe sustainability is one of the pillars in our business success. Thank you.
Thank you, Abel. I'm going to welcome another young innovator, who is Izzeddin, who won a Destination Zero Innovation Challenge, which is organized by the British Council. Izzeddin, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here. Okay, yes, I'm here. My name is Izzeddin Kamil.
Sorry, Izzeddin, to interrupt you. So I'm going to ask you a question. Could you speak about a bit about your solar power and three-wheel design, as well as let us know if you had unlimited resource and time, and what kind of innovation would you create, and also tell us about your innovation works you're doing.
Okay, thank you so much. My name is Izzeddin Kamil. I'm 20 years old. I'm currently a university student at Addis University. My project were solar and electric three-wheeler. So the solar and electric three-wheeler is working with electric charging, solar charging system without any fuel. It has the capacity to take 500 kilograms, and its final speed is 60 kilometers per hour. Most part of the material that I have used to invent is from broken electrical machines and from the market. The cost of the solar and electric bike, the solar and electric three-wheeler were 728 pounds, or 40,000 Ethiopian birr. The problem that I'm trying to solve is decreasing carbon emission, which is generated by a diesel vehicle. Ethiopia has 88,015 three-wheeler. All those three-wheeler are working with fuel. All those three-wheeler are producing carbon emission. I wanted to produce my solar and electric three-wheeler tech here in Ethiopia, starting from a small scale to Cape, to fight climate change and to save my customer money, which is spent on buying fuel. Winning British Council Destination Zero competition helps me a lot to start my production of solar and electric three-wheeler here in Ethiopia, to join the electric vehicle market. So I also invent a lot of additional invention. I also have another 36 different invention. All those invention are related to climate change. So for those all my invention, I got different recognition that I got 14 local award and one global award from British Council recently from Destination Zero climate change competition.
Thank you, Izzeddin. I'm going to give you a floor to ask if you have questions to Gonzalo or Nigel.
Okay, thank you so much. Hi, Champion Nigel. I'm very pleased to meet virtually with you here, and I really appreciate your impactful and exemplary contribution to climate change. I only have one question for you. I have been working on both solar and electric three-wheeler and bikes. They are really innovative because of using local material, and now I have tested and confirmed my self-charge car with circuit simulation. The self-charge car uses a maximum of 1000 watt to move, and also generate a maximum of 1000 watt when it moves, meaning it works anytime when it moves, directly charged. How do you envision the future of mobility? Do you anticipate a boom in demand of e-mobility solution like my prototype? How so?
So, Izzeddin, it's fantastic to meet you, and congratulations. It's interesting what you've described. I think really draws on what Jodahi was saying about local, because of course three-wheelers is not something that you would think about if you're in London, because we have
yes,
three-wheelers is a big there's a lot of three-wheelers in some parts of the world, but not in others. So I think that's great. I was also thinking, Helena didn't, I noticed, Helena, that you're an architect by training, and I think that if you want to change mobility, you have to think like an architect. It's a whole system, right? It's not just the vehicle; it's the charging infrastructure. So there's definitely going to be a massive boom, right? And it's going to happen much faster than anybody thinks. So I would encourage you to go as hard and as fast as you like, and find partners, right? Because this is so big, you won't be able to do it on your own. Find partners with like the electricity companies who are going to have to invest in the charging infrastructure, with the city governments who are, you know, the mayors are the ones that citizens complain to about the quality of air. So I think, you know, when I was in Nairobi, one of the few trips I've managed to get into earlier in the year, I helped launch a pilot of an e-motorbike service, because you know, motorbike taxis I don't know if it's the same in Addis, but in Nairobi they have a lot of motorbike taxis, and of course an electric motorbike costs more to buy, but it is much cheaper to run and cleaner and safer, and you can charge it overnight with that. So I think that E2 wheelers and E3 wheelers are going to grow very, very fast, especially with entrepreneurs like you driving it. So really exciting to hear your story.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you, Nigel. I'm going to go back to Abel. If you have questions to Gonzalo or Nigel.
Okay, thank you, Yared. Yeah, my question is to Gonzalo Munoz. First of all, I'm very much inspired by how tricycle started in Chile and expanded in different countries. It's really great inspiration for the young fellows in the climate action to see the private sector leaders are called high-level climate action champions. Coming to my question, we want to keep our focus on producing eco-friendly products and bring
Not me, right?
No, we lost Abel.
And it seems like we lost Jared as well.
It was Jared as well. Oh dear.
Right. So, Yodani, you're the only one that we see moving.
I think
you're back. No, they're back. They're back.
Okay, Abel, we lost you.
Yes.
Gonzalo, did you hear the question? Abel
Not
raised?
the question. No. He was referring to triciclos very nicely. So thanks for that, but I didn't receive the question.
Let's give him the floor again. Abel, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. So coming to my question, we want to keep focus on producing eco-friendly products and bring positive environment impact and also to the society. So as you are coming from the private sector, what challenges you faced at the early stage, and what advice can you give us based on your experience?
Well, thank you, Abel, and thank you for what you do. I think that challenging, as Nigel said, different types of mobility and different types of material is absolutely crucial and has this local content that is so important. There is a permanent challenge while innovating, right? I would say some of them are outside of yourself, but many of them are inside of yourself. People will tell you that this will not work most of the time. Like people start to, like society thinks about or tends to maintain the status quo. And I thought it was you, Nigel, the other week that mentioned that there's nothing like the status quo. Things are changing every single day, but somehow in our minds we try to maintain this precise moment in time that doesn't even exist, right? But that's how it is. And people will start telling you that things are not going to work, and that requires quite a strong capacity of crossing those barriers. Sometimes it's not about crossing them, not confronting them, by skipping them, like trying to find how can you remove it, and if you cannot remove it, just keep it. And sometimes what I do use many times is you need to convince somebody and you're not capable of convincing somebody, try to find who is that person that would convince him or her. Then there are some other elements that are important. Then sometimes we're so stubborn, we're so determined that it's hard for us to understand that things are really not working. So you also have to find which is the right moment to say, okay, my idea is really not working. And that's mostly required some elements internal on yourself and maturity to understand that you don't have infinite resources, infinite time to fail. It's really important to fail, but it's really important to fail fast, to learn fast, and to take that into consideration for the next iteration of your innovation. Then there's some other elements that are important as a broader context. Fall in love with the problem. Don't fall in love with yourself, with your solution, with your company, with your innovation. Fall in love with the problem and understand that in order to resolve a problem, it's not going to be you only. You need those partnerships that Nigel was talking about. Myself, I have never started anything in my life by myself. I'm loving this idea of running this Champions World with Nigel, as I've done Triciclos with Joaquin and Manuel, and I started Porcula with Sven, and I started Sistema B with another 3 friends, and I started my family with my wife. I've never done anything alone, right? And it's so good to have somebody beside you to also check when you're being too stubborn, when you're being wrong, when you are being selfish. You need somebody to be able to talk to you those nasty things, the things that we don't want to listen to many times. And finally, it's about the impact. So find your metrics and commit to that impact. So many times what we're searching is a kind of the reward. Search for the impact and the reward will come. But do not search for the reward, because that would probably take you to do very wrong, wrong things and probably fail faster than you would like, or everybody would like.
Thank you, Gonzalo. That's a very powerful answer and also very inspirational for young people, especially who are in the social entrepreneurship and also entrepreneurship paths. This is what we really need to, and also this is what an inspiration and also a real experience we would like to hear. Thank you for that. I'm going to go back to Helena to raise questions to one of the climate champions. The floor is yours, Helena.
Thank you, Arit. Well, my question falls for Nigel. First of all, it's an honor to meet you, and I'm very excited to be here. And my question for you is, how can you help me continue my fight in building, in building resilience and adapting to the impacts of climate change? And also, I want to know, what are your thoughts on the roles the architecture sector can play in building resilience?
Thanks, Helena. Well, first of all, as I said, I think architecture is one of the few professions. I mean, ecologist is the other one, right? Where you're really trained to think systemically, and you're trained to think as a designer. And of course, we all know that it's much easier to change the outcomes of a system at the design stage. You think about a car. Once you've got a car, if it's a combustion engine car, the only way you can affect the emissions is by marginally driving more efficiently. Whereas at the design stage, you can design a solar-powered three-wheeler, right? So you can completely change it. So I think the architecture profession as a way of thinking. So I would think not just narrowly as what do architects do, and I would think particularly extending that beyond like buildings to like communities. So. And that also then I think links to the idea of the role of nature-based solutions. If you think about how can we improve informal settlements? Well, yes, we need to provide access to power, water, sanitation, but also trees, right? There's an article in National Geographic magazine just last week that shows one street in LA that starts in a rich neighborhood and ends in a poor neighborhood. And in the rich neighborhood, it's all green. So it's cooler, people have shade. In the poor neighborhood, there's no trees, it's hotter. And as we experience more extreme heat events, so something as simple as incorporating that nature-based, we often think of nature-based solutions as whole forests, but actually small amounts of trees in poor neighborhoods can make a huge difference. Mangrove restoration is another example of structurally changing the vulnerability of whole communities to storm surges. As to how I can help you, Helena, I don't know, other than telling you probably don't need my help, but because you're part of a really important and powerful group of young people who are leading through their work. I would just, I'm always in awe of Gonzalo's wisdom. I think listen to Gonzalo when it comes to entrepreneurship, but particularly think about those partnerships that Gonzalo talked about, right? I mean, we are all talking about systems change so huge that it's both impossible and kind of ridiculous to think that any of us can do it on our own. So you've got to find your fellow travelers and people who have access to different parts of the system work with you. Through our Race to Resilience program, we're really trying to highlight those kind of really bold collaborative initiatives that are driving change. So might be, you might find some inspiration by looking at some of them. One that comes to mind that we're looking to get off the ground later this year, I mentioned Sheila Patel, is something we're calling Roof Over Our Heads. Over 1.5 billion people live in slums in the world. If you think about that, that's obscene, right? With so much wealth in the world, nearly a quarter of the world's population live in areas where they don't have a proper roof, they don't have access to piped water or sanitation or power or internet, or if they do, it's very unreliable. So that's a huge design problem, Helena, that it's going to need all the skills of architects who understand the challenges of climate change to solve. So maybe watch this space to see when we get something going, and maybe there'll be a way for you to get involved in that and help us with that as well. Okay, Gonzalo, everyone's frozen except you and me. No, he's back.
And I'm mute. Yeah, Yodahi, you're there. So seems like if they don't come back, you have to continue the
I think
show.
I know we have very little time left. I'm really keen we get to the last two speakers, so we should maybe invite Amde to join us from Planet Farm. And maybe I know that Yared was going to ask you, Yamde, to tell us a bit about what prompted you to start up Planet Farm. Amde, if you can hear us.
Just Jared back.
Yes, I think we were lost.
Yared, I was just jumping in the interest of time. I just asked Amde the question you were going to ask him.
Yeah. I'm going to welcome Amde, and also, Amde, the floor is yours. Just tell us about what prompts you to start up the Planet Farm. Yeah, we were just lost. Sorry for the internet.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right. As we all know, agriculture is the backbone of the Ethiopian economy, and the agriculture sector is dominated by smallholder farming system. And the birth of Planet Farm is the birth of Planet Farm dated back to 2020, when I was assigned to develop analytical information about agriculture in southwest Shuar of Oromia region. Basically for our environment protection project. We observed that farmers are facing various constraints that hamper productivity. Major constraints include poor soil fertility, poor usage of fertilizers, sometimes overwatering and sometimes underwatering of plants. And the weather phenomena related to climate change, like drought and heavy rain, affected the agricultural sector. The weather shifting is a major threat of food security. So as a social entrepreneur, a problem is always an opportunity. So in order to combat the effects of climate change in food security, we developed a new agricultural technology digital device. This device is capable of analyzing and informing the farmer about the seasonal weather conditions, the type of crops to plant in those seasons, where to plant, and the type of pesticides needed for the plant. Also, it analyzes the moisture, the amount of moisture in the soil, so it don't go over or under water. So these informations are delivered using a smartphone application, and now currently we are trying to develop a text message platform for to reach out farmers that have no access to smartphones. Basically, our digital tool is capable of increasing food production and ensure food security. And we named it Planet Farm. My name is Amde and I'm the founder of Planet Farm.
Thank you, Amde, for your answer. And also, do you have a question for the champions? And also, if you can speak more louder or nearer to the mic, your voice is a bit far.
Okay.
Yeah, now it's good.
Okay, good. It's an honor to meet you virtually, Mr. Gonzalo and Mr. Nigel. But my question is for Mr. Gonzalo. I have a question. As a social entrepreneur as one social entrepreneur to another, what's your advice on scaling up business ethically?
Well, thank you, Amde, and thank you for your initiative. I think again that connects me a little bit to what I talked to Abel. There are certain elements that are outside of you and some others that are inside of you. It's hard to manage anything ethically if you don't work yourself. Manage your ego first, right? It's not about you, it's about the impact you're there to deliver. And that's something that you have to take into consideration. Second, there's no perfection in the world. Nobody's perfect. Every one of us has a glass roof, and therefore you have to also understand and know very well what are your shadows, right? In my case, as you write, I love what you referred to, a problem is always an opportunity. Every company, every organization in the world should be there to solve a problem and never to create one. And solving a problem is not only about what you do, it's also about how you do it. In that sense, that took me to get connected to the certified B Corp movement, the B corporations, and start mobilizing not only my company as a company that is there to really promote B Corps and promote a better way to manage your impact, to have that budget and to have those KPIs internally that will show you how are you managing, how you're progressing in environmental and social impacts, but also in a way that you're working for the whole system, campaigning, as Nigel said. It's not only about your company being successful. You need to find a way for you to make the whole ecosystem be successful. In that case, we work on creating the global movement of certified B Corps. We have a team in Africa also developing it. So I would encourage all of you to connect to our B Corp team, our B Lab team in Africa. And when it came to Triciclos, we defined that our motivation was that waste is an error of design. And part of the design is the whole system that is wrongly designed. It's not about the product. It's not only about how you manage to close the loop for certain materials. You have to manage a system that is related to public policies. How we as entrepreneurs coming from the private sector can become public servants by helping the public institutions to develop better public policy. So all of that should be integrated in your motivation on what you do on a daily basis.
Thank you, Gonzalo. Let me welcome Nancy Chavait. Nancy, are you with us?
Yes. Thank you, Jared.
Okay. Nancy, could you tell us how you and your organization is impacting the community in Gambella?
Okay. I am a social worker by training, and I'm from Kenya. But in the last 5 years, I've been working in Ethiopia. And I work with Truza Ethiopia for Africa, which is an Ethiopian national organization, which works in several regions of Ethiopia. And when I was assigned to be project coordinator in Gambella region, which is in Western Ethiopia, I worked with the youth. So part of this youth, they were trained by British Council on active citizenship. And after their training, they identified solid waste management as one of the social issues affecting their communities. And as a way of solving this social issue, they developed a social action project, which is named Trash to Cash Initiative in Gambella. And in this project, these 25 youth are the ones who are collecting waste in their communities and along River Barrow. River Barrow is the river which is flowing through Ethiopia in the Gambella region into South Sudan. So they are collecting waste in the community and in this river. And after they collect the waste, they sort it, then they safely dispose the waste in an identified central landfill, which was not there before. Then they recycle the rest of the waste. So one impact which we have seen so far is that The environment has been conserved along the shores of the river. There are no much waste nowadays, and there is clean water. Initially, there was a high crisis in water in the town, but nowadays we can get clean water from the river. And also the water vector diseases has reduced. Before, the children would be playing on the filthy grounds, but nowadays, because the waste is well managed, there has been a reduction in this kind of diseases, and as well as youth employment opportunities. These 25 youth are encouraging other youth to also be involved in collecting this waste, because once these waste are collected, every business premise, they give some amount of money to the youth. So it is one of the livelihood for the youth, as well as a central landfill. Before, in the whole of the town, there was no central landfill. Even if someone was there to collect the waste, there was no place to dump this waste. But nowadays, there is a certified central landfill where these youth are dumping their waste safely. Thank you very much, Jared.
Thank you, Nancy. Do you have questions to the champions?
Thank you. I'm very honored to meet both Nigel and Gonzalo, and I have a question to Nigel. So having served as a COP26 high-level climate action champion, you have probably interacted with many youth across the globe, not only in Africa. So I would like to ask you if you could give us some advice on how African youth could be more involved in climate action, please.
Well, first of all, hi, Nancy, and thank you for sharing the progress you're making. It's really impressive, right? And I think the first thing I would say is start with Gonzalo's advice to fall in love with the problem, because actually being a problem solver is what gives you the ultimate influence, right? Because people will see that you're making a difference, and that attracts more attention and more opportunities. I think the second thing I'll say is as you start to have an impact, quite important to think about how are you going to increase that impact? How are you going to take it to scale? And it's not an obvious question. Sometimes people think that the way to get to scale is to take something that's working and turn it into a global plan, right? That can often be driven more by the ego than by actually, right, a practical approach. Sometimes the best way to scale something is just to do it so well that it becomes an amazing model for others to copy. Right, so scaling something doesn't mean that you have to do everything. Again, you can't do everything in the world; it's too big. So I think one of the keys there is to find your partners, right, and to think about is your route to scale, for example, taking the solid waste management model that you've built, and then finding partners to extend it to other towns, and then the whole country, and then the whole of Africa, and the whole of the world, or is it giving all of those young people that you've talked about, a taste of how doing this kind of work can both improve the environment and generate income, and then encourage them to go and start their own different initiatives tackling different parts of the problem. So you focus more on education, understanding rights, and explaining about social entrepreneurship. So I think once you've got something that's working, it's a really big decision. Where do you go from there? Do you just make it brilliant so people copy it? Do you use it as a platform to empower many more youth to go and start their own things, or do you build it out at scale? So I would say think very carefully about how you go to scale. Would be my number one piece of advice.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you both, Nigel and Gonzalo, for your time and also your answer, and also very inspirational advice for young people. Before we conclude, I'm going to share you that we have a commitment after discussing, or after this dialogue, we have a plan to plant the trees in the next couple of days, as we are in the Go Green campaign in Ethiopia. This is a winter season in Ethiopia, and also which we are doing a Green Legacy initiative, which was launched by the Prime Minister in planting billions of trees. We aim to plant as a country 20 billion trees, which is a very phenomenal initiative. So I hope any other countries also share or take exemplary effort from Ethiopia and also replicates the effort as climate changes, global effort, and also like a partnership. So this is, we have also an action following this discussion also. So with this, I'm going to conclude, and also I'm going to give you the final remark. I'm going to give you a floor to give a final remark for both of you. Let me start now with Nigel.
Well, yeah, look, I want to thank you and everyone we've heard from for your leadership. It's, you know, it's really inspiring to hear the amazing work that you're all doing. And we know this crisis is so huge, it's going to take everybody. You know, I've often said that this crisis requires everybody to find the limit of where they're comfortable and then take one more step. And that requires courage. I think all of you are demonstrating, you know, the courage that is required to be an entrepreneur, because it means taking a step into the unknown, knowing that you might fail. But as Gonzalo said, there is no status quo where nothing fails. The status quo is catastrophic failure. So I just really thank you for all of your courage. I wish you all the best of luck. And I hope that next year when I'm working very closely with an African champion and maybe there's a little less restrictions on travel, that I can come and visit Addis Ababa and meet some of you in person. Thank you. And over to you, Gonzalo.
Thank you very much, Nigel. It has been incredible opportunity to get to know, in some cases, the face that has created some initiatives and innovations that we have been following from the distance. And definitely, I just want to reflect on something that we have been talking about for quite a while. The success of the climate agenda will very much be related to the success of COP27. So everything that we build from now to wherever the COP27 is going to be held is extremely important for the solution of the global climate crisis, because in many ways, Africa represents the size of the crisis that we are building. As Nigel referred to initially, the media of the age in Africa represents the importance of building that future with the youth being part of the solution. The problem that you're facing not only in the environment, but and the rural areas, but also when it comes to the cities that are being built in the continent, represents the size of the challenge. The need of leapfrogging many of the technologies that are being implemented in the global north. We need to leapfrog for those technologies to really land in the continent as soon as possible, for you not to go through some technologies that we need to set aside. So there are so many elements, and all of that takes us to the challenge on really mobilizing the human capacity, the talent, the innovative capacity that all of you represent. You have our commitment to put all of our efforts for not only the success of this agenda in Glasgow, but the success of this agenda at COP27 in your continent. So thank you again. It has been an honor.
Thank you, both Gonzalo and Nigel, and also some of you are hoping to participate in COP26, and also we hope to meet you in person in Glasgow in COP26. Yeah, so finally, let's have a group picture. So let's just do the climate sign C like this and have a group picture. The technical team will help us. Yeah. I think they took the picture of us. Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you for your time. I would like to apologize for online participants. Due to the time limits, we couldn't afford your question to be answered, but definitely we will get back to you virtually or via the social media. Thank you so much. Thank you all. With this, I close
Bye-bye.
this meeting.
Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.